And tonight on Qnews special coverage, Egypt rejects any plans to displace Palestinians from Gaza as aid convoys continue to cross into the Strip. In Israel, protests grow over hostages while tensions rise after a missile launch from Yemen. Meanwhile, world leaders meet in Washington as the US-Russia talks stall on Ukraine. We bring you in-depth analysis and on-the-ground perspectives from all sides. Stay tuned. Egypt has voiced strong concern over reported Israeli plans to displace Palestinians from Gaza. In a statement, the Foreign Ministry said Egypt's contacts with countries allegedly approached by Israel confirmed they reject such proposals. Cairo reiterated its absolute refusal of any attempt to force Palestinians from their historic land in Gaza or the West Bank, whether through violence, starvation, or settlement expansion. The ministry stressed Egypt will not accept or participate in such displacement, calling it a grave historical injustice that would amount to the liquidation of the Palestinian cause. And Egypt has sent its 16th aid convoy Zed El Izza to the Gaza Strip through the Karam Abu Salim crossing. And the convoy carries hundreds of tons of food, flour, medical supplies, and other essentials to support residents suffering under the Israeli war. The Egyptian Red Crescent said the aid was carefully diversified to meet urgent needs, including baby formula, oil, sugar, and cheese. Cairo's continued convoys aim to ease the humanitarian crisis facing Gaza's population amid worsening living conditions. The Israeli army says it has intercepted a missile launched from Yemen, triggering sirens in several parts of the country. And according to military officials, Israeli air defenses brought down the missile before it reached its target. The launch, claimed to be from Yemeni territory, caused alarm across multiple regions as warning sirens were activated. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz vowed that the Houthis would, in his words, pay a heavy price for any attempt to target Israel. Tensions in the Red Sea and surrounding areas have been escalating in recent weeks as regional groups continue to exchange threats with Tel Aviv. And Israel has witnessed nationwide protests and a general strike organized by families of detainees held in Gaza. Thousands took to the streets in several cities responding to a call from the Forum of Families of Israeli Detainees. In central Tel Aviv, now known as the Hostages Square, demonstrators carried pictures of detainees and blocked key roads, including the main route between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. Protesters also set tires ablaze overnight, creating heavy traffic disruptions. And Israeli media reported that rallies spread to more than 350 locations across the country, including Jerusalem, where crowds demanded an agreement to bring back the captives and to end the war in Gaza. Hamas has condemned Israel's displacement plans in Gaza, calling them a form of genocide. And the movement said that Israel's efforts to push Palestinians towards the south of the Gaza Strip represent a new wave of what it described as brutal genocide and forced displacement. It added that the introduction of tents under the guise of humanitarian arrangements is a deliberate act of deception. Hamas further accused Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government of seeking to uproot Palestinians from their land as part of a wider plan to establish what it referred to as Greater Israel. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has set conditions for ending the war in Gaza. Netanyahu said Hamas is demanding the withdrawal of Israeli forces from the Gaza Strip and the buffer zone, a move he claimed would allow the group to regroup. He added that maintaining Israel's security control over the Strip remains one of the conditions for concluding the war. The Palestinian Ministry of Health announced that the death toll from the Israeli assault since October the 7th, 2023 has risen to 61,944 martyrs with 155,886 injuries. The ministry reported that Gaza hospitals received 47 martyrs and 226 wounded in the past 24 hours alone. It also noted that since March 18, 2025, the date when the genocide war resumed, the toll has reached 10,400 martyrs and 43,845 injuries. And for further analysis, we are joined from Cairo by Ambassador Mohammed Hegazi, the former Assistant Foreign Minister. Welcome to Qnews, sir.
Pleasure, ma'am.
Let me start off and ask you, how credible do you think are the reports of the Israeli plans to displace the Palestinians from Gaza? And what would be the regional consequences, do you think, if this was to be implemented?
Well, indeed, it is serious. The declaration of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs this afternoon reflects how serious it is, and it is our duty to work hard with partners and international institutions to stop the Israelis from what they are going to do, displacing the Palestinians to the southern part of Gaza. Not only a step towards forced displacement, but also it's a crime against humanity to cram 2 million Palestinians into the southern part of Gaza with no means of life. We are witnessing a catastrophe in the making, and the international community has to play its role. And don't forget that there is certain names of countries circulated. They accept Palestinian displaced from us. And this is in itself what the Egyptian declaration this afternoon, the Egyptian Ministry of Foreign Affairs statement clearly identified that few countries' names are circulated as hub for Palestinians displaced from Gaza. And I think this is a matter that we have to take it very seriously.
And that brings me to my next question, which is, what role do you think is Egypt playing in countering these displacement proposals, and how effective are its aid convoys in alleviating Gaza's humanitarian crisis?
Well, the first part of your question, yes, Egypt is working with all partners to stop the forced displacement. At the same time, it has already announced that passing through Egypt territory or Sinai is a red line. The second part, Egypt humanitarian assistance is working since day one, and it was only the Israeli who blocked the other side of the Rafah crossing, who prevented the influx of the Egyptian assistance to Gaza. However, lately we are working hard to introduce more assistance, either through the passageway in Karma Abu Salim or through the airdrops. So we are working on all fronts, and we are urging our partners in the region to work as hard as we do. As you know, Salma, 70 to 80% of all what has been sent to Gaza was from Egypt. And I have to say that we are continuing our duty towards the Palestinian cause, both politically, humanitarian, and of course, as you may have followed politically and diplomatically, a group of Palestinian groups was in Cairo last week, and a senior level meeting with Hamas also was held in Cairo, and all this effort was coupled today with our meeting with Prime Minister of Palestine.
Yep. Mr. Ambassador, how do the ongoing Israeli domestic protests over the detainees influence the government's military and political strategy in Gaza, do you think?
I think they will continue a bit nervous and worried because of the recognition of 18 countries in the first week of the World General Assembly meeting of the Palestinian state, and this in itself has caused a lot of tension inside Israel, and I think it's a strategic victory to the Palestinians, and I'm sure that part of the unlawful declarations of Netanyahu about Israel expanding to the neighboring countries or Greater Israel, and the declaration of Smotrich for 3,800 settlements is in itself also another reflection of the nervousness that describes the attitude of the Israeli politicians because of the international community continuous support to Palestinians. And I hope that the number will increase till the first week of September, and I'm sure that the world community will reflect itself after that by sanctioning Israel if it didn't follow and obey the world community's decision of adhering to the two-state solution.
Sir, what legal frameworks under international law do you think would apply if displacement were pursued? And how might this affect Israel's global standing?
This is, first of all, a war crime. And I may use your program to raise my voice and to call for the International Court of Justice to accelerate its efforts, at least to issue, if not the final verdict ruling, to issue a new compulsory rule. The rulings of the ICJ was not respected by Israel, and those rulings are helpful in stopping the crime of cleansing. If the judges are going to wait till 2027 as expected, the genocide would have completed its toll on the Palestinians. So time has come for us all to raise our voice and to pressure the judges, because as we always say, that delayed justice is injustice occurred on the other party. So the injustice occurred on the Palestinians are caused not only by the Israelis, but also by slow justice. And for that, the International Criminal Court has taken decision towards two of the Israeli leadership, but they are all war criminals. The ICJ has to finalize its verdict or announce at least temporary measures that will help stop the genocide. Otherwise, we are all complicit in this crime.
Sir, could Netanyahu's insistence on maintaining security control over Gaza prolong the conflict? And what other alternatives are being discussed at the international level?
I think the world community has spoken already, and no single minister, including the German foreign minister who was in Israel, met with Netanyahu, and he delivered many messages. We heard some of it when he met with President Mahmoud Abbas later on in Ramallah. I think the Israelis have exceeded any acceptable norms and limits, and they have to be stopped. And the Americans also should be also be accountable for what the Israelis are doing. They are the ones who deliver all the arms, who are supporting them politically, economically, and in the Security Council. Imagine that the world community should have called the Security Council to discuss the declaration of the 3,800 settlements by Smotrich. But we all know that the United States, contrary even to previous administration, might not support and may veto this decision. And that in itself is not only a crime, but it is supporting the crime committed by Israel. So the forced displacement is in the heart of the right-wing Israeli government, and we are vigilant, and we have to keep all the international bodies together, and hand in hand will make this crime a failure, as we did with the crime of the racial discrimination in South Africa. The apartheid regime in Israel will fall, as was the apartheid regime in South Africa.
And from Cairo, that was Ambassador Mohammed Hegazi, the former Assistant Foreign Minister. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on Q News. European leaders, including from Germany, France, and Britain, will accompany Vladimir Zelensky to meet Donald Trump in Washington. And ahead of the Washington talks on Monday, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, French President Emmanuel Macron, and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer were hosting a meeting of allies to shore up Zelensky's position, hoping in particular to lock down the robust security guarantees for Ukraine that would include a U.S. role. According to sources, the U.S. and Russian leaders discussed proposals for Russia to relinquish tiny pockets of occupied Ukraine in exchange for Ukraine ceding a swath of fortified land in the east and freezing the front lines elsewhere.
First, I think our common objective is to secure this unconditional ceasefire.
Russian President Vladimir Putin held a phone call with the Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko to discuss the ongoing talks in Alaska. And the press service of the Belarusian president said that two presidents discussed the situation in the region in light of the talks in Alaska. Putin informed his Belarusian counterpart in detail about the results of the last Russia-US summit. And Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov held phone calls with his Turkish and Hungarian counterparts just hours after a summit between the Russian and the U.S. presidents ended without any agreement on ending the war in Ukraine. According to the Russian Foreign Ministry, the calls included an exchange of views on the outcomes of the high-level Russian-American meeting held in Alaska on August the 15th. And for further analysis, and we are joined now from Moscow by Mr. Ammar Qana, the political science professor, and welcome, sir, to Q News. And let me ask you, what do the European leaders hope to achieve by accompanying Zelensky to Washington, sir?
Greetings to you. With respect to the this visit accompanied by Zelensky, I think it is a sort of the pressure attempt upon President Trump. And through the European American ties, Trump's administration excluded European unions and even Ukraine. That created a state of fear for the European Union that the crisis could be resolved based on the interest ranging the European interest. So it could be considered at the last bit of pressures or to convince President Trump to change his mind about Russia, or his attempt to put European interests on the table. But I do not think that these matters and pressures could be practiced upon President Trump, as we see that the policy became very clear, and the opinions of the Russian and American relations and the political solutions for the crisis. This should be noted that President Trump, we may say that he has adopted the Russian perception with respect to the temporary truce that wasn't pushed as such, as he's speaking today about the radical solution to the causes of the conflict since its outbreak.
Mr. Khanna, how realistic do you think are the security guarantees for Ukraine that involve a U.S. role?
With respect to the security guarantees, several talks were laid down. For example, European proposals through European footings within Ukraine, aerial defense systems provided by Britain, let alone Ukraine's joining the NATO. I do not think that Russia would accept such proposals. They just to float such guarantees with the U.S. There were statements with this regard that the U.S. would sign a great deal with the Israel that could be part of a guarantee. Such a matter is very sensitive for Russia. With respect to the military approaches of the Russian borders or the footings on the Ukrainian territories, I think a formula would be laid down to go inside with the Russian proposals. Following the approachment were made not in public but in Alaska. With respect to the quarantines, back to the history only 3 years ago, when the European system, along with the NATO and the US, ignored the issue of security guarantees requested by Russia. Now, today, they requested such guarantees. As a reality, we can see that the equation has changed as we are moving to the last stages of the conflict. Basically, the security equations in European zone.
Sir, do you think the reported U.S.-Russia land swap proposal should it be taken seriously by Kiev or its allies?
السؤال فيما
Do you want me to repeat the question? Could the reported U.S.-Russia land swap proposal be taken seriously by Kiev or its allies?
With respect to the swap of territories, as we've seen such a proposals in the media by the US that been addressed with such a swap that made Ukraine and EU is very worried that for Russia is considered illogic and it is on the table, but without entering to the force areas that adjacent to the federal Russia. So talking about the territories controlled by Russia in three districts, Kharkiv and Kursk, in return of leaving Ukrainian forces from the left district that joined annexed to the Russian. And I think it is the only solution to move forward for peaceful equation. And so we may say Russia could provide security guarantees if Ukraine acknowledged the Russian sovereignty of such areas. There would be having no justification of returning to the military status that we have seen today.
Sir, how do Putin's calls with Belarus, Lukashenko, Turkey and Hungary fit into Russia's broader strategy, do you think?
Pardon? The sound. Can you please repeat the question?
Sure. How do you think Putin's calls with the Lukashenko, Belarus and Turkey and Hungary fit into Russia's broader strategy, do you think?
Respect in the international stances such as Belarus and Turkey are very much braced and the principle of reaching a political solution that could not be pleased by the European partners as such, the same as Ukraine, but are before a reality that cannot be excluded from the political landscape. The Russian troops that made such a political equation today, so the whole world had fed up of such a conflict, but European reluctance that we can still see up till today that disrupted many solutions with respect to these crises. But all what's happening now from the changeable or variables of what's happening today is within the process of transferring the world from unilateralism to the polar system, as we've seen the political crises throughout the regions that were about to be ignited into fire. Along with the rapprochement between Russia and America, I think would be having great opportunities in reaching the international peace and security and rebalance the system in the world.
Mr. Khana, why do you think the US-Russia summit in Alaska ended with no progress at all? What do you think, if you can share with us maybe, why do you think the reasons that it didn't end with anything, and what does that signal?
I do not agree that such a summit came out of the results. Everyone was very anticipated of tangible result on the ground, but it was only just for an expected framework, not to impose a hegemony or a political decision upon Russia or upon the United States. So this is the first springboard that we can, through which we could build a system or the new world order. So everyone wanted to have some sort of decision being made regarding Ukraine, but the size of the Russian-American ties is bigger than the Ukrainian file. The most importantly, with the return of dialogue around the strategic stability and talking about the deployment of the nuclear weapons. Therefore, such a framework that started in Alaska, I think it would be the most significant step that could be recorded even in the modern history.
Okay. Well, and from Moscow, that was Mr. Ammar Khana, a political science professor. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here today on Qnews. And with that, this concludes our special coverage episode. And don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. Thank you so much for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.